that we can have. Imagine parents not feeling they have to fight the system, not feeling that they have to engage lawyers in order to get EHCPs. And imagine when you get an EHCP for your child, well, what's the point of it if it just then sits on the shelf until next year's update, but the provision that you fought for then doesn't get delivered because the psychologists and the therapists haven't got time to deliver the provision because they're working too hard providing other EHCPs. Imagine more teachers, specialist trained teachers, in those small specialist schools in many more areas, as opposed to 50 miles away or more. Imagine spending less money and getting better outcomes. It is absolutely doable. It is absolutely possible. And I suspect that almost every parent would prefer not to be arguing with councils, but to be talking collaboratively, constructively with teachers in their schools, local specialist school, local mainstream school, saying, how can we help? How can we get better provision? And as part of this, I've been talking to many parents with SEN children and also heads of mainstream schools with adjacent specialist units and also heads of specialist schools. I believe that is the ambition that we should aspire to, that reform is determined to aim for. Is it easy? No. Will it happen overnight? No. Is it worth absolutely trying to have these difficult conversations and to reform the system? You bet, because it's the children that benefit the most. Now, there are some strange things going on within this whole sector. For example, many may not know that there are now some over 30,000 places, independent specialist places, that are for profit, that are now funded by private equity groups who see this as one of the big growth areas, turning over some 2 billion plus, growing at 10% a year, making incredibly healthy margins, 300 to 400 million pounds of profit in the specialist sector alone. Hang on, so we've got a socialist government that wants to tax charitable schools, providing great education, but that are seemingly quite happy to scrap more specialist state-sponsored schools and have more private equity-owned specialist schools charging 3 times the price, charging more than Eton. Something's not quite right here. Doesn't compute. Doesn't seem sensible. What about the opportunity, for example, for some of these specialist charities working in this particular space, that actually they were to set up and run many more specialist schools in the same way that independent schools are charities? That could be a great way forward. There's about 100 new specialist schools set up every year, all of them private equity funded, almost without exception. I think we can do things differently. And to those who say, where's your evidence, Richard, about all of this? Well, this 50-page report from the County Council Network, produced just a few weeks ago, I would urge everybody to read it. It's really, really important. How we got to the crisis point and why we need reform of the system. Well, that is absolutely the issue. SEND this year costing taxpayers some £12 billion, and yet that report shows that outcomes are no better than about a decade ago. And in many cases, for the children most in need, the outcomes are worse. How is that possible? Of the growth in EHCPs, educational health and care plans, in the last decade, some 88% are related to neurodiverse issues. In the last year alone, EHCPs for speech language is up some 18%. Are we really getting this right? What we have, folks, is a system that is completely broken. The SEND system is broken in Britain, and Reform are determined to fix it. And that's why I'm announcing today that we are setting up a SEND working group to be chaired by Dame Andrea Jenkins, who has considerable professional and personal experience in this sector. And there will be a number of members of this working group, Reform councillors, Natalie Oliver from Lincolnshire, Beverly Fordham from Kent, along with experts who are currently working in the profession and who therefore, for reasons that I hope will remain obvious, must remain anonymous. And you sort of think, well, why? And that comes back to this issue of, well, some people are afraid, and we mustn't be afraid. We must actually be bold and embrace this. And the plan for this working group is they'll be working through all of 2026, but to produce its first interim report in the first quarter of next year, probably just before